Yep, this is a pretty accurate depiction of what it takes to finish your thesis during grad school. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1992 supernatural horror film, Candyman. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Candyman stars Virginia Madsen, Tony Todd, and Xander Berkeley, and was directed by Bernard Rose. Based on Clive Barker's short story, The Forbidden, it tells the story of grad student Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen, as she researches the local urban legend of the Candyman, and soon finds out that there may be more truth to the legend than she initially believed. So I gotta confess that I was a major latecomer to this film. I've known of its existence and been interested in watching it for years, but I somehow just never got around to it until last October. I don't know exactly what I thought this movie was all these years, but definitely not this. I guess I was always under the impression that it was just another slasher, and to a certain extent it is, but this was far different and far more than I ever would have guessed. On one hand, I'm glad that I get to experience and take a look at this film without the influence of nostalgia, but on the other hand, I'm disappointed because I missed out on decades of being able to watch and enjoy this movie. For me, this film is such an unexpectedly excellent mixture of stories and ideas, of style, of genre. It's a movie that, even watching it now, nearly 30 years after its release, somehow feels both classic and modern at the same time. It pulls elements from so many horror subgenres, but combines them in a way that still feels fresh and relevant. With its built-in mythology and much of the stylistic flair surrounding the Candyman himself, this movie harks back to traditional gothic horror stories. And with the investigation-driven plot and the gruesome murder mystery elements, the Italian giallo influences are very evident as well. But this film doesn't restrict itself, and I think that's really how it takes on this timeless feel. It pulls from those classic subgenres, but it also draws upon more modern ones as well. Candyman is a slasher film. It's certainly a different take on the genre than many of the movies and franchises that dominated horror during the 80s, but it still has most of the key hallmarks, just delivered in a slightly more slow burn fashion. This story has psychological thriller components to it, presenting certain plot points in ways that keep you guessing about the reality of what's happening. It's also a biting social thriller, set and filmed in the infamous Cabrini Green housing project of Chicago, and touching on racial tensions and systemic injustices in a way that effectively melds social commentary with the supernatural. In spite of its impressive genre blend, Candyman is very much a film of two distinct halves. I really enjoy this movie as a whole, but it's the first half that truly shines for me. I love the way this first half of the story unfolds, because it's so different from what you would expect a movie like this to be. It begins as an investigation of sorts, and just like the giallo films that served as its influence, the investigation isn't led by the police or a detective, but rather an everyday person. Helen is a grad student working on her thesis. She's researching urban legends and stumbles across the local legend of the Candyman. She's not a character that's trying to put herself in the midst of a horror movie. She certainly puts herself in some dangerous situations, but the danger in the first half is more grounded in reality than the supernatural. Helen's an academic, exploring the origins and perpetuation of an urban legend. She's examining the social pressures that led, quote, an entire community to start attributing the daily horrors of their lives to a mythical figure. So this first half is very investigatory. She interviews people. She scans through microfiche newspaper articles at the library. She goes on site to take pictures and piece things together. But unlike in so many other legend-based horror stories, she's not really going into it trying to prove or disprove anything. She's just trying to understand. While the first half of this movie presents as a tense but grounded mystery thriller, the second half sees a significant shift. A fateful parking garage meeting sends this film spiraling in a very different direction, not just from a story perspective, but also a stylistic one as well. It no longer has the controlled analytical feeling that it once did, instead taking on a much more disorienting style of storytelling. Helen is moved from a proactive position to a reactive one, and so both she and us as the audience are left with a suddenly fragmented and incomplete picture of what's happening, and are forced to grapple with the possibility that what we're seeing might not be reality. Like I mentioned before, I enjoy this movie as a whole, but especially on rewatch, this second half was definitely weaker than the first for me. However, it certainly pays off by the end, building up to an intense climax and some impactful finale aftermath. This movie is already really great from just a story and plot perspective, but then when you take the more technical elements into consideration, it takes everything to an even more satisfying level. It's a grimy movie, but it's beautiful and intentional in its griminess. Remarkably, some of the scenes were actually shot on location in Cabrini Green, which gives the production design and the visible anxiety on the actors' faces a level of authenticity that wouldn't have otherwise been achieved. Despite the seeming simplicity and visual dullness of a dilapidated housing project, this film manages to capture some vivid and iconic imagery. But of course, the visuals aren't the only iconic thing here, and no discussion of Candyman would be complete without mentioning Philip Glass's score. Much like the film itself, the score has this timeless quality to it. It has a classic, creepy, almost gothic choral aspect to it, but then it's got this very memorable music box-like piano melody that perfectly captures and represents what this movie is. Candyman is a film that I truly regret sleeping on for so long. There's just so much to like here, and so much to dig into. The mystery plot and exploration of urban legends, the supernatural horror as a means of delving into social themes. At its surface, it's a relatively straightforward horror story, but it's interwoven with so much subtext that you could interpret it in any number of different ways. Plus, it's just an incredibly compelling story, with some excellent performances by Virginia Madsen as Helen, and also Tony Todd as the iconic Candyman. I may have been late to the Candyman party, but I'm here now, and I can try to make sure that nobody else makes the same mistake I did. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one has gotta be the story. I love the way the plot unfolds here. It's very atypical for a slasher. This movie's only a hair over an hour and a half long, but it uses its runtime to the fullest, taking its time to build up the tension in the first half before letting things get crazier in the second. I think the premise of having a grad student doing research for her thesis was a genius way of approaching the story of urban legends, because it feels like a reasonable and grounded way in. It makes it easy to introduce the characters, establish the settings, even provide us with important background information that, delivered any other way, could have felt like excessive exposition. But the way this story is crafted makes us feel like we're going along for the ride with Helen, both for her research and also for the repercussions of that research. The second pro is this film's genre blend, or perhaps more accurately, subgenre blend, because the mixture here isn't pulling from vastly different genres. It's all under the general umbrella of horror/thriller, but it's such an unexpected and satisfying blend that changes over the course of the film. What initially seems like the setup for a cheesy legend or curse-based supernatural story quickly shifts gears into something much more investigatory. It's got giallo-tinged murder mystery elements, but also has a noticeable foundation in gothic horror. On top of that, it's a slow burn slasher and a social thriller that manages to transition back and forth between being something supernatural and something psychological. Pro number three is the score. So I'm somebody who really likes music, but in general, film scores don't tend to jump out at me. But that's exactly what Philip Glass's score does here. It's such a standout element of this film, and is perfectly suited to the story, imbuing this timeless quality to everything. It's creepy, especially with that haunting music box melody, and is extremely memorable, but it's also very simple, and adds to the ambiance and tone of the film without being distracting or overpowering. On the con side, my issues are pretty minor, but the first has got to be the husband subplot. It's not horrible or anything, but definitely feels unnecessary for the majority of the story, because it doesn't really ever drive Helen's decisions. It all has a little more significance during the third act, but I think the payoff that we get probably could have been achieved in another way without this particular subplot. The second con is even more minor, but it's something that sort of negatively stood out to me on this rewatch, so I figured I should at least mention it. The style shift at the halfway point. Like I said before, this is a movie of two halves, and while I like both halves, I think the second half is a good deal weaker. The disorienting narrative style makes sense in the context of the story, but it's definitely frustrating as a viewer. The excitement of not knowing what's going to happen helps to keep that frustration at bay on your first watch, but it's extra apparent on rewatches. This is something that really could have hurt the film, but luckily the payoff and satisfaction of everything coming together by the end helped to make this an almost non-issue. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Candyman or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Candyman 4 out of 5 paws. This is such an interestingly blended and interestingly crafted horror movie. It's got a compelling story, excellent performances, meaningful subtext, and a whole lot of iconic elements packaged in a deceptively simple form. I would recommend Candyman to just about anybody who likes horror. I realize that's very broad, but I think this is a movie that has broad appeal within the genre because of how many different things it does well. If you like mysteries or giallos, you'll like a good chunk of this movie. If you like slashers, you'll like big parts of it. Psychological thrillers, gothic horror, social thrillers, supernatural horror, it's got a little bit of a lot of things, but it really works. If you liked Candyman, I would recommend The Ring, specifically the American remake. It's another movie that focuses on a perceived urban legend and offers a similar mix of mystery investigation and creepy supernatural horror. If you're interested in another supernatural mystery horror, you might want to check out The Skeleton Key. It's another film that pulls in some gothic elements, this time Southern Gothic, and offers a twisty supernatural story. And if you're in the mood for another horror movie with some unexpected social subtext, you should watch The People Under the Stairs. It's another film that's likely very different from what you may be expecting. It's very bizarre and also fairly creepy at times, but surprisingly works as a whole. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Candyman? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie that focuses on an urban legend? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.